guys, Frank here from Garageaholic. Welcome to another episode of the E30 M3 S54 Part 2 build. Today we're going to be finishing up our differential. We're doing a 346 limited slip 3-clutch setup that's going to be 40% lockup. It's going to be awesome. It's going to fit perfectly in there. Once we get that differential installed, we're going to reinstall the exhaust, make sure that exhaust is sitting perfectly on the output tips of that bumper, and then of course we're going to start getting everything going for getting this engine started. And hopefully by the end of the episode, we can get this thing cranking. Guys, stand by. You don't want to miss it. So here's my limited slip diff. This is a 346 medium case. These gears are 45 on the ring and 13 on the pinion. And here's the pinion over here. We are going to be pressing in our new bushing, or new bearing rather. And when you press these pinion bearings on, you can see that this is kind of free floating. And that's really important when you push these on, is because you want to press only on the race of the bearing, never on the cage. So you always want to make sure that this is nice and loose. And you'll see what I'm talking about here. I have a pneumatically powered 20-ton press. So it pushed it in and it's still spinning freely. So we'll finish pushing that on. Okay, and it's done. Let it go. Take these out. And this guy is ready to install. So the next thing that we need to do before we install the pinion is to install the carrier assembly. So we're going to install the carrier and we're going to make sure that it's shimmed enough so that you can get only 4.4 to 5 inches of preload. Basically, you spin it and it spins relatively freely in layman's terms. How it needs to shift left or right, if we take a little bit of spacing out of here, we need to add a little bit of spacing here to make that same overall thickness. So let's first install this, and then we can figure out what that spacing would be to get that 4.4 to 5 inches of preload. All right, the spacers here are 174 and 157. Those are millimeters. So we're about 3.3 millimeters total to get the nice spinning carrier that we all love and know. So what I did here on the pinion side is I replaced the races on both sides. You can see the race in there as well. And the bearings are obviously new as well. I just pressed this one in. This one doesn't get pressed in with the press. We actually just put that on through the torque that we apply to the nut. And we also, of course, we need a new crush washer. This is a brand new crush washer. This one here that's red, that's a used crush washer. And you can see how much that washer actually pushes down after you apply the torque to it. And the purpose of the crush washer, as it sits right in here, is to, when you do torque this to a preload of 15 inch-pounds of moving force, very, very important, it maintains pressure outward, and also it keeps the pressure on the bearings so that it does't loosen up on you. And if it loosens up on you, you're going to get differential whine. And that's the whining of the bearings, having a non-linear load from each of the needles onto its races. So we definitely need to make sure that we torque this correctly and we get this if we get this to the 15 inch-pounds that we require. For the final installation, you want to make sure you put your input bearing here, and then you got to put your input seal there, and then everything just kind of pulls through. This is where that's going to end up going. Now, yeah, I used an impact, but that's okay. As you can probably hear, there's still a lot of lateral play, and that's because the spring washer, the clamping washer, is not compressed, and that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be putting a lot of force on that, and it's going to be compressing that clamp. We're going to be doing that one by hand. We'll be doing it, checking it, doing it, checking it, until we get our 15 inch-pounds of rotational force And then we know this guy is set to go. All right, so I know that this might be hard to see, so I'm gonna try doing this in slow-mo. This is rotational torque. This is literally the torque that's applied, and it's a moving torque. So it's about how much force is required to maintain the motion. And you can see here, probably right around 15, right? Go upside down here. I'm gonna do this in slow-mo so you can see it a little bit better. All right, now that we've got our 346 3-clutch disc setup installed and ready to go, we can now put it right in there. Okay. The differential is completely installed. The half shafts are in, the bushing is in. We also tightened up all of our drive shaft nuts. The drive shaft center bearing is tightened. Everything up here is already tight. You can see here we have a reverse switch that we have to wire up, but that's gonna be for another episode. But for now, we need to get this beautiful exhaust back on. And there are so many hangers. We have too many hangers on this, so we're gonna make some modifications and get this thing hanging exactly the way that we want it to, with the minimal number of hangers required for this application.
Button this up completely and install our rear ABS sensors. We need to make sure that these wires, these exposed wires, are protected. So we got some 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch split loom, and we're gonna put split loom over it and tape on either side to make sure that these wires are completely protected. Just want to show you in a quick 1 minute on how to actually do a split loom over a pair of wires. The first thing you want to do is put the tape on. You put the tape on like this. You kind of put a couple of rings around it, just a couple times around, right? Good. Start with that. Then you take the split loom and you find the split opening here, and you put that over the tape. Let me show you. That goes over the tape end. It's a little bit hard to wield. There we go. All right? And then you got to push this on. But the important thing that I'm trying to gather here for you is that now that you've got your tape through the split part of the loom, now you can continue to wrap. We'll end up having to wrap it a little bit more over this piece. I misjudged the length a little bit. But the point is that the tape is not only wrapped around the wire, but it's also wrapped around the split loom itself, which means that the split loom isn't going to pull on you when you try to install it, or if anything else happens, it'll remain together as one entity, and that's the important thing. Brake pad sensor wiring is done. The ABS wiring is done. These are Z3 hubs, so these are Z3 sensors that are installed in here. I've got my speed sensor wiring, which I have to snake back out from inside. But one of the things I did want to do here was is actually get all of this cowling done. Let me zoom out here. This cowling that goes underneath here, and I want to install all that because that's really good stuff to have here, especially when you're talking about an M3. Just getting all that stuff set up is really important. So this rear diffuser kit is a 7-piece kit. As you can see, I've only got 6 pieces. It gets affixed with these wire nuts, these clamp nuts with 8mm screws with washers on them. We are missing this piece here on the other side, so we're not going to be able to do that today, but that's really easy to do anyway. Installing this is very straightforward, but I'll do it in the time lapse and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. In fact, the time lapse is probably just going on right now, and I'm just gonna talk through it. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, you're talking about just getting the wire nuts on each of the pieces and then just clamping it down. So it's relatively easy to do and pretty straightforward. All right. Looks pretty good. Everything seems to be matching up. Damn, not bad, not bad, not bad. All right, in the car, we're working on the stereo system. Dan's doing a great job of installing the subwoofer.
This is the in-panel, indoor quarter panel subwoofers, and we've got them wired up. We've got our Decklid, reupholstered Decklid by J&R Upholstery. They did a great job with this, so that's been installed as well. We just need to come up with a method of actually holding this in place, because there is nothing holding it in place since there is no rear piece back there that he has at the moment, and there is going to be no back seat. So that needs to be figured out. We're probably just going to do some sort of a bracket that holds it in place temporarily. But the speakers are installed. This is a component speaker setup, 5 1/4, and we're going to do the same for the front. Before we install the seat, we're going to do that, and then of course we're going to wire up our new Blaupunk head unit. So when it comes to the radio wiring, it's actually pretty easy. Going into the radio, there are 4 primary wires you need to hook up. And we have our harness here, and we've got a lot of additional wires that we don't really need. Now this is an M3, so there is no antenna wire that we need to hook up, because the antenna is automatically put through there and it kind of goes right into here. So there is no power antenna that we need to turn on. But we do have power, ground, and switch power. So here we've got our red with a green stripe, and that is power. That is constant 12-volt power. We've got our violet with a gray with a violet stripe. That is our switched power. We've got our gray with a red stripe. That's our illumination wire. So that when you change the illumination on the headlight switch, all the lights dim appropriately, including the radio. And then of course we've got our ground. That's a brown with a black stripe. And this is our antenna. So that's basically all we need to do to wire this thing. And then this just plugs into the back of the radio. And of course, these are going through RCAs to an amp. So we're not going to be doing speaker wire on the head unit side. We're just going to be doing 4 RCAs to the amp, and then the amp is going to distribute the power to each of the 4 speakers through speaker wire. Okay, so my 4 major wires are installed and wired up. I've got my antenna here, and I've got my RCA. So I'm just going to take the head unit, which is an awesome Blaupunk Frankfurt. This is a RCM 82, and this is a very nice modern throwback head unit that we're going to install here. So we've got our cassette liner installed, and we just have to take these tabs and fold them back, and that's going to set everything in place. And then we can just take the head unit, plug it in, and push it in until it clicks. Right front, left front, right rear, left rear. Okay.
Guys, that just about does it for this episode. We did a lot of work here. The big one was the differential, where we got those 346 gears installed with a 3-clutch disc system, limited slip for 40% lockup. This seems to be a really nice differential. We also got the exhaust installed, and we got it aligned, bringing it down just a tad so it sits right smack in the rear bumper. And we also did the radio. So we got those subwoofer boxes installed, we've got the radio wiring, and we've got our Bremen head unit from Blaupunk installed. The next episode, we're going to be working on the cooling system. Now, if you remember in the last episode, we installed the E30 coolant temperature sensor. We TIG welded it into the actual thermostat housing so we get really good, accurate E30 temperature sensing to the cluster. Now it's just a matter of finishing up that cooling system, getting it filled up, bleeding it, and in the next episode, we will be cranking this S54. So hopefully we can get this thing started. Guys, thanks a lot for watching. Thanks for staying tuned, and I'm out of here. Later.